Welcome back to another episode of My BrainWise Coach. I am one of your co-hosts, Cole Bastian, and I'm joined by
Phil Dixon, the other co-host.
And we are so excited to be back with you on another episode on this journey of understanding ourselves from a neuroscience and a little bit of behavioral science sprinkled in. And we have an exciting episode for you. This is the week of Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to our followers, listeners, BrainWise friends that live in the United States. Those that don't, we also wish you a happy fill-in-the-blank holiday if there's one happening in your country at the time. Otherwise, still have a fabulous week. And for those in the U.S., enjoy your friends, family, all the things you might be doing this week. And really, most importantly, remember we have so much to be grateful for, even when we might not feel that way. So that's number one. Number two, another reason we're so excited for this episode is, drum roll, we have our 5 contest winners that we are going to be giving away one of Phil's books, Understand Your Brain for a Change, and a $10 gift card to go to Starbucks, go to your favorite, whatever it might be. We're going to be sending those out, and we have our 5 winners. So we just want to take a moment and say thank you and acknowledge everyone who submitted a submission to our contest and our giveaway. If your name doesn't get called, that's okay, because we're going to do more of these along our journey. And so there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to engage and have one of Phil's books and a gift card of your choosing in the future. So thank you for being on this journey with us. And thank you for sharing our podcast and liking it, reviewing it, commenting, subscribing, all the things, because it's helping to grow this really amazing BrainWise community. And as of today, we're actually almost at 800 subscribers, which is so exciting and so honoring. Phil and I our definition of success was we wanted one person, Phil.
Absolutely.
so we didn't know. And now we're in 800 plus people that we don't know, but we're getting to know along this journey. So we're so glad that you're with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Phil, is there anything you'd like to say to our contest winners before we announce their names?
Nope, but I do have one addition.
Yeah.
I do know that we've got one person that's not from the US. So maybe a Starbucks gift card might be particularly not useful to them. So we need to think about that.
Definitely. That's a great point, because we do have someone who won the contest that is not, I believe they're in India. That's just based off of what I have seen. But we've got a lot of people across the globe that are tuning in to our podcast. So it's so exciting to see this community that's coming together. Without further ado, we have 5 winners. We said we would announce 5 winners, and we are going to announce them for you today. So take a deep breath, hold on, whatever it is, to see if your name gets called, and we will get started. So the first one is Nikki A. The second is Laura S. And I apologize in advance if I am mispronouncing anyone's names. It's certainly not with intention. Trying to do my absolute best. The third is Akshat A. The fourth is Charlene S. And the fifth and final is Julian B. So exciting round of applause for our 5 contest winners. We're so thrilled that you're going to be getting one of Phil's books and a gift card sent to you. So you will all be receiving an email if you were one of our selected or our random winners, and we will send you an email and congratulate you, as well as ask for your best mailing address so that we can send out your gift card and book to you. So be on the lookout for that so that we can ensure we get those to you as quickly as possible. Phil, this is exciting stuff. We started this podcast 5 months ago, and look at where we are today.
It's amazing. So thanks, everybody, for coming along with us on the journey. And before people ask, can you send me an audible version of your book? It's in the process of being made, but so far I'm only on chapter 2. So the answer to that question is not yet.
Maybe we'll do a live nighttime bed story. You can read one chapter at a time to us live, Phil.
Yeah, that'll put everyone to sleep, I'm sure.
Not meant in that way at all, by the way, because the book is fabulous read, but very good. Yes, so exciting. And we're just so grateful that you're all joining us along this journey. So again, congratulations to our 5 contest winners. Thank you for sending in your submission. And thank you, most importantly, for being along this journey with us, because we're so glad that you're here and that you felt empowered and you felt inclined enough to share our podcast with another person or your social circle. Without further ado, we're going to dive into today's topic, which we're just coming off of a 2-part series, Phil, where we were talking about the art and science of effective communication. We talked about the 3 parts of communication: asking great open-ended questions, how do we best communicate or tell our perspective, and then probably most importantly, how do we actively listen to another person. And so it was a great discussion on how we can all improve our ability to be effective communicators with those that we're in conversations with. And one of the things we've mentioned in that series, as well as we've dropped it along the journey, is we've talked about this multiple characters and how there's different characters that we all embody at different times of our life, different times of the day, whatever it might be. And so I thought, as we were talking about what we wanted to go through next, is maybe we have a little bit of a dialogue around what is this multiple characters aspect? Why is it important? And how might someone who's listening in identify their characters? And so for our listeners today, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode because it's the week of Thanksgiving here in the United States. This particular episode is probably 20 to 30 minutes, and that will be launched on Monday. And then we'll have our regular Neuroscience Digest episode that comes out on Thursday, but we will get back to regular scheduled programming the week after Thanksgiving. So I think this conversation today around multiple characters is the perfect opportunity to use it to talk about this really interesting aspect of our brains. Phil, why don't you get us started? What does it mean? Why is it important? And how can I use it in my personal life?
Let's start off with some of those occasions when we either are doing a formal assessment or we're answering a silly quiz or we're answering something which might be supposedly your character type. And the question's asked, which way do you prefer? Do you prefer the written text or a visual image?
Right.
That's actually a pretty intense question. But sometimes our answers to those are, it depends. And then most of the time, it doesn't give you an opportunity to respond in that way, actually, in the assessment. So you have to pick one or the. And so, in effect, what you're doing is picking an average self for yourself, whereas in reality, there's no average. So if you go back to Jung, Jung had what he called the 12 archetypes. And he said, we all tend to have one of these archetypes. And that's probably true in that we can lean in one of those directions. Whether you believe there's 12 or not is a different question. The point is, none of us is exactly that. And one of his students, a guy called Assagioli, basically challenged Jung and said, I'm not sure that's true. I think we've got characters inside us. And what we do is we live our lives with a blend of those characters. And he called it psychosynthesis. And I strongly recommend to all of our BrainWise readers that they not read that book. It is one of the most arcane books I've ever come across. But the good news is there was one of Assagioli's students who said, yeah, I know this is pretty difficult. Let me translate it for you. And a guy called Piero Fiorucci, I think that's his name, wrote a book called What We May Be. And he explained the fact that we've got these multiple characters inside of us. So that's the sort of background to it. Do I keep going?
Yeah, let's do it.
So when I do my workshops with people and we start talking about how they behave, and we talk about different ways that people show up, particularly on the context that we're in. And what I mean by that is what they're facing, they're stressed, whether it's Monday morning at 9 o'clock, whether it's Friday afternoon when they're exhausted, whether they're at a golf course or anything like that. And when we all behave, we have different characters. So it's fun to identify. I know I've got at least 6 or 7, and I'm happy to share them. But I'm going to give you an example of one that I met many years ago. Many years ago, I was playing golf, and I signed up, I was in Hawaii, for a golf lesson. And the pro showed up, and he was one of the best teachers I've ever had in my life. And the mechanisms he used to teach were superb. He was aligned with the way I think. He was a very gentle character, and we got talking about it, and he said, "What is it you do?" And I explained what I did. He said, "I tell you what, I'll offer you a week of golf lessons if you do me the pleasure of giving me one of your 2-day workshops." So we did an exchange. Fast forward 2 months, his name, I won't give you his full name. His name's David. David showed up at my workshop. It's one-on-one workshop. And we sit down, we have a cup of tea, and within 10 minutes, this guy is beating his fist on the table.
Mm.
And I was blown away. This was not the character that I had met when I was in Hawaii. And I stopped after listening to him for 3 or 4 minutes when he was beating the table and swearing. I stopped him. I said, "David, I'm confused." I said, because the guy I met in Hawaii doesn't seem to be the guy that's showing up and sitting opposite me now.
Definitely not the calm and serene one you met.
Not at all. And he stopped dead in his tracks. And he said, "That's what my staff tell me all the time, that there are two sides of me that show up. And the fear that they have is they never know which one is going to show up next."
Wow.
And so we explored that, and I won't give you any more details, but he went back with a conversation with his staff about how he knew we identified 5 different characters in him. There was that real contrast between the 2 main characters, this soft-spoken, gentle giant of a teacher and this horrible giant of a... We finished up on, some people will understand why, he gave that one a name called Dick. We won't go into it any more than that. But that's an example of, an extreme example, admittedly, of 2 different types of characters which were confusing his staff.
It's interesting. We have not done that work for me to do personal care or my multiple characters. So maybe we can take a couple minutes and go through a couple for me to identify for people in real time, so that they can learn how to maybe do it on their own. I know I've experienced a very similar thing, and you probably have seen it, where I normally am probably one of the most compassionate, empathetic people, not trying to be boastful, but just a part of my innate nature. But then there are times when I get overly frustrated, and you saw it, you actually commented it on the other day, and you're like, "I don't think I've seen this side of Cole before," where I said I was going to do some things that I normally probably wouldn't say. I would never actually do them, but I was so frustrated, and it was all around my husband was going through running for city council. And anytime you do those kinds of things, all kinds of wonderful people show up, and they come out of the woodwork to say things about people. And it was really driving me crazy because I don't like people saying things about my husband. So anyways, I definitely can relate. And I'm sure as our BrainWise friends are listening, they're going, "I have had that same thing," or "I've been given that feedback where one occasion I'm this person, on another occasion I'm this person," or at least in terms of how I'm showing up. So I would be interested to hear, how do we go about identifying that? And why is it important? Like, how is it useful?
First of all, it's useful. And I'm going to give you another example, and then I'll relate to how this lady applied it. And this is some time back now. I was working with a woman who was, I'm going to change her name. Her name was Anna. And that's the changed name. Mm-hmm. Anna was divorced from her husband. They had 2 young boys. I think they were like 5 and 7 when I met them. And her husband had a very wealthy position, but he refused to pay alimony. He refused to pay child support. So she was having to drag him back into court literally every 3 months. And she never got what she wanted. So we started talking about her different characters, and clearly there was a mother character in there. And she described 3 or 4 other things. And then I asked her about her job. And she was a vice president of sales in a mid-sized company. And I asked her how she did, and she said, "Oh, fabulous. The company's growing well. I'm growing well." And I said, "Describe your role as VP of sales." And she said, "Oh, that's different to all of the others. That is what I call my strictly business character. And it's focused, it's on point. Although I'm kind, I never take no for an answer, blah, blah, blah." So I said, "Curious, why don't you take that character into court?" And went, "I never thought of that." Wow. About 3 weeks later, she phoned me up and she said, "I got exactly what I wanted." The first time ever. And she said, I went into the courtroom and my husband would always play on my emotional side, he'd always give in. And so this time I left my emotional character outside the court door and I just said, Bob, this is strictly business. And kept using that phrase. And the judge looked at her and said, I like how you're doing this, and gave her everything she wanted. It's how, not only how we can start to differentiate those characters, but use them in an appropriate context. And I think that's the big point of it is for all of us is, and if we can identify what the strengths of each of our characters are, then we can actually use them much more appropriately.
Absolutely. And so if I am, and I actually would like to maybe identify a couple while we're on, but how would someone who's listening to this go, I know that's something that I would like to learn. I'd like to understand my multiple characters because I want to start playing or showing up in spaces differently. How does one go about doing that? What does that look like?
When you're working with somebody else, can often see those different characters. Ask around is one of the things to do, but be willing to accept what you learn. You may not like what you learn. One of the women, when I first learned about this, which is many years ago, there were 6 of us, one of the women turned around and said, I hate one of my characters. And she went on to describe it. She described it as she was I'm not sure I can use this word. We may have to edit it out. She said, I'm a lazy, and that shocked all of us. It was very honest. And she said, it is part of my character. And one of the things that we find is if you ignore part of that character and try and suppress it, it'll leak out in some ways. The words that the characters use tend to be different. You described yourself just now as saying, I'm calm, I'm compassionate, and all of those other words. And then you described the other character that came out that was my words, but feisty, swearing, all those things.
Oh, yes, because I don't use naughty language very often.
I know. I think I've heard you swear one occasion. And it was right then and there. So we tend to use different words. We tend to have a different worldview of life. It's almost like our mental models tend to support one character or another character. And each of these characters you can start looking at, what is it they want out of life? There was one lady I was working with, and this is just a few years ago. She was the eldest sibling. Actually, she was the eldest of 4 daughters. And she said what she grew up with was carrying that around as her role. She had to be the best at everything. She had to be perfect. She had to be the role model. She had to take care of everybody else. And that's how she showed up at work. But she said, there's an equal part of me that wants to just lay back, smoke weed, and do nothing and listen to great music. And I have to suppress that character the whole time. And when she showed up at work, clearly it was the responsible eldest daughter that showed up. So being right and driving for perfection. And she had a couple of those other characters. I said, can you both show up together at work? And she went away this was a 2-day workshop. She went away at the end of the day. She came back in the following morning and she was literally flying. And she said, I realized that when I was younger, I had another character, which I have suppressed, called the fighter, which gets what I want. That gave her the energy to identify that other character, which had been buried for a number of years. So first of all, there's no magic bullet for how to identify these characters. It's an exploration, but most people find it a pretty exciting exploration.
And on average, how many do people typically have? I know averages are not useful, but I think in this case, giving some context, maybe a range is better of where someone might be so they don't end up with maybe a list of 50.
So let's be really clear. This is not 50. And it's not characters that all of a sudden come out that you don't understand. Sybil. We're talking about those that are identifiable and that you've seen occur on a number of occasions. I don't think I've ever worked with somebody that didn't identify at least 5. If it gets to more than maybe 8, 9, 10, then maybe you're being too granular. And look for some things that might go together. But if you've got, so very often somebody will have a character that's very tiny, but only shows up occasionally. I'll confess to one of mine. This character shows up maybe once a decade, and I'll call him the Iceman. And that is, this part of my character has no sympathy, no compassion, wants to be on, don't bug me, blah, 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 blah. And no affect or emotion. I doubt whether you've ever seen that character. No.
Probably a little afraid.
Yeah, people are. I will tell you one of my characters, and that is, and I'll give you a bit of the background, and we can always edit this out if it's too long and not useful. But I may have told you this one, and that is when brief story, I had a Range Rover, and it was in for repair for its 5th time, and for the same issue, and it hadn't been repaired. By that time, I was on first name terms with the service agent, and I said to him, "Is it going to be fixed this time?" And he going, "Absolutely, sir." I said, "Good, because if not, when I pick it up, I'm going to drive it through that plate glass window." And he looked at me, said, "You look serious, sir." And I said, "I am." And the person I was with, who was my mentor at the time, as we were walking away, he said, "Who was that?" I go, "What?" He goes, "That character, I've never seen that in you before." He stopped, he saluted, and he said, "Good morning, Wing Commander Brutus T. Headstrong."
What a name.
And so when that character gets triggered, when I see things that are around me that are unfair, unjust, or don't just make any logical sense.
Right.
If I walk into a store and you're standing there waiting to be served, and there's 3 store assistants at the other end of the counter, all talking amongst themselves and ignoring me, that character will come roaring out. That's the time when Kathy says, "Why don't you go and stand outside?"
It's interesting because, one, sometimes you have to have that character come out because the sternness is necessary to be able to move things forward. It's interesting as you're describing that, and as we've been talking today, I think I've identified 3 that I would probably go with. And I'd be curious, because you've known me a long time now, what others you might think are in existence that I haven't come up with. But 2 relate to what you were just describing, where you have the Wing Commander, but mine, I think, is split into 2 because it shows up differently, where there's the Protector. I don't know what I would name it, but that's the premise of it. And that's, I think, who you saw when we were talking about my husband and the city council. And that side of me shows up if somebody my mom's going through, or my sister, or my husband, of course, or someone in his family. If someone is coming after someone that I really care about, or really in general, if I see something unfair, unjust, it's not right, the Protector comes out because I want to ensure that we are all treated fairly, right? We may not like the outcomes, but we should all be treated the same. And then, of course, when it's my very personal family, it even comes out more. And then the other one that is half of that, where you're describing going into the rest of the store and you're seeing people they're not paying attention or whatever, I would call that one the general. And that's the one that I show up with at work. And right now you're being highly inefficient. You're not paying attention. You're supposed to be delivering great customer service, because I'm not trying to protect anybody. I'm trying to get something accomplished. And so that I would probably call the general. And then the other one, which is one that for our Disney fans, I think it was Disney, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Have you seen that movie before, Phil?
I have, many years ago.
Oh, I love it. I even like the new one with Johnny Depp in it. But anyways, I was going to call it Willy Wonka, but I don't think that's right. I would call it Violet. Do you remember Violet, the character?
I don't.
So Violet was the one who ate, I think it was a blueberry, or ate something within the factory, and it made her blow up like a balloon. She was this big old blueberry that they had to go like juice and get all the blueberry juice out of her. Violet Beauregard, I think is how you pronounce it. That's one of my characters. That's the one that when I just want to do absolutely nothing, and all I want to do is I want to go and eat all of the sweets, all the chocolate, all the ice cream, all the cake, all the cookies, all of it, all the cereal, because I've had a bad day or I'm bored, whatever. That's my emotional kind of, I'm going to go eat everything in sight because I just need to eat away all of my things, and I blow up like a blueberry and I feel sick all the rest of the day. So anyways, those are 3 I identify right here and now.
And that's a great start. I think there's at least one more.
Okay.
And you are a very gentle teacher. I have experienced that of you teaching me some of the technology. You are kind, smart, thoughtful, patient, Never feel like I'm being pushed. You'll work at my pace, not yours. And I think there's part of you that is that incredibly good teacher. There's part of you which is on the professional side. It's not the general. It's the very thoughtful, constructive, creative synthesizer of ideas. So I see at least of those two.
Yeah.
So some people, if they're thinking about their character, may actually be going, yeah, are there any standard characters that we see? And the answer is yes. I often see a judge in there. You should have done that. And it's all the should, could, would, ought to, all those type of words that come out of the judge. So many of us have that character. We have an adult character, the parental character that you wants to direct and go, again, pointing in direction. The judge is very evaluative. The parent just says, do what I say. And then most of us have some kind of child character in us, which tends to be one of 3 or 4. It can be a scared, fearful child. It can be a bratty child. It can be a happy, playful, humor-driven child. And I've got that happy, playful, humor-driven one, as I believe you do as well.
I think it's the my child character be a mixture of that, but there's also a part of me that will show up. It's the same child character, but maybe it's different in some ways, where it's more insecure, fear-driven. Just some of the things that have happened in my life that then, and I've learned to, obviously, because that's one that doesn't play well in my adult life and needs to stay where it was. But it shows up a lot of times in my marriage when I start to get something will happen or we'll have a disagreement. I can tell that child, that character is coming out because the way I respond is not who I am. And so I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, cool. That needs to go away.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about, this is a long topic. We're just skimming the surface at the moment. But the characters tend to show up in context. And so if you're having 2 glasses of wine on a Friday evening when you've had a busy week, that's when the negative side of some of these characters can show up. And so each of these characters has a worldview of their own. They have their own dreams. They have desires. They have their own strengths. They have their own weaknesses. So if you can identify, and this is what we encourage people to do, I actually draw it in a big circle and say, for each of the characters you can find, then identify what's a general description about them, what's their negativity, when is the time when you've seen them come to the fore and be very applicable, and when have you seen them basically screw up? Because and then the really useful thing is, in moving into the future, how can you best take this team of players you have in your head and make certain that they come out when is necessary, their strengths come out or they stay back. But the other thing is, sometimes these characters can combine together. So if the general and the protector come together, for example, in your case, I imagine that's not a pretty sight.
No. Right? And I don't really let that happen anymore. When I was younger, probably when I was 8, maybe under 21, I'm sure my mom, because she listens to our podcast, thank you, Mom, love you very much, but she will know these characters 1,000%. She probably has a few others she'll want to add to the list, but that one, when it's the general and the protector coming together, it's not. That's one that needs to stay in my younger years, because it was, not pretty. Oh my. The amount, we all grow. It's one day we'll have to talk about it, but the amount that I've grown in my life, and I think everyone has from when we were younger in high school and college, you go through different phases of life, and I am just a different person than I was back then, and I'm sure others can relate to it. So no, the general protector combination, Phil, that's going to stay in 2010.
And so that's when they can come together. They can also be in opposition to each other. And again, I had a lady I was working with for a long while, and she had a character which was very effusive, flirtatious, enjoying life. And she had a character, and Lexi, I think she called her. And then she had another one, which she actually gave a man's name to, Arthur, because Arthur was this very judgmental, shouldn't be spending money, should obey the rules. And she said, and it was a real conflict in our head. And just at any point in time, who are you going to give the keys to the car to? You have a choice to make.
Very interesting. I'm sure when Joey listens to that part, he'll go, oh, there's a character that Cole has there too, where let's not spend money, let's save our coin or save our dollars so that we can do whatever it is. Not judgmental, it's just we have, for both of us, how do we make better financial decisions? But I would put that in with the general, because that's who shows up in that space to say, okay, we have a plan, there's things we need to accomplish, we're going to do it. I'm a very emotionally driven person, except for when the general comes out. That's where emotion goes away, and it's just we're focused strictly on the task at hand.
And we do know, so a lot of this is around the neuroscience. We do know that there's a left brain and a right brain, and they tend to have different characteristics. And I would say in your case, your compassionate, cool, calm, collected self is your right brain, and the general is a very left brain character. So
totally,
we've not gone into a lot of detail on that in the past, but we can. I will add one other thing to it, and I think that this is where the key comes, and that is have fun with it. Play with it around and laugh at yourself when you find that character coming out. Oh, there it is. Now, it's for this character to be out right now. And very often you'll find, no, you got the wrong one.
Exactly. Very good. Phil, I think this has been a really good conversation, and I imagine people are going to want to hear more about this in particular. Maybe we can, and I'm just coming up with this off the cusp, but maybe there's some folks that would volunteer to want to do it live to identify some of their characters, because others are going to relate to this. As they hear it, they're going to go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And so maybe we'll find some folks who we can bring on, and we'll do a part 2 of this in the future where we dive deeper to identify them in real time, as well as now, how are we seeing them show up and how is it helping us? Because I imagine there are so many really cool nuggets along this journey that people are going to go, that I really resonate with that part.
Yeah. So. And since this is going to be Thanksgiving week, and this is true wherever you are in the world, is which character do you want to show up?
Exactly. 100%. Because I imagine there's also this, especially with the age of technology, a new character has probably arisen for a lot of people, which is the one that I'll just describe as distracted. Which is I'm on my phone, I'm watching social media, but in this case, during Thanksgiving time, and maybe you don't, and that's okay too, but do you maybe want to put that character aside for a while and show up with the one that wants to connect and nurture relationships? So, very good. Phil, before we end our episode, what is your BrainWise or Brain Unwise moment from the past couple of days? I can go ahead and get us started off. Maybe it'll trigger something for you. And so I had a BrainWise moment yesterday where there are several things I was trying to get accomplished. And what I wanted to do in my mind was go ahead and just relax and watch some TV, because it's been a pretty busy week. We had a busy weekend. We had a bunch of stuff going on. And we haven't had a lot of time to just stop and do. I like to just stop and do nothing for a little bit because it allows me to detox, and TV or reading a book, one of the two, it is the only time my brain is fully able to disconnect from all the things that I need to do in life. And so yesterday I knew that if I didn't go and actually get things accomplished, I was going to regret it. So I pushed through, went and got the things that I needed to get accomplished. I even went on a nice walk. I didn't feel like working out, but I went on a nice walk, had a great conversation on the phone while doing that. And at the end, I felt so much better at the end of the day, even though I didn't get to just sit and do nothing and relax, but I knew that if I didn't get these things accomplished, I was going to feel behind. It was going to cause more nervousness or more worry about things in the future because I didn't get them done. And so I'm so glad that I did. I said, you know what, Cole, we're going to do this weekend. We're going to go have some fun and see a comedy show. And that's when you can relax and do nothing. That is my BrainWise moment of the week, is I forced myself to accomplish and be accomplished throughout the day yesterday.
And I have remembered mine, and that was probably 3 days ago, in one of my other businesses. There's a lot going on. My head, and I was awake for most of the night going around, and I decided, hey, the best thing I can do is write everything down. I spent most of the day before yesterday writing out not only what I thought was going on, but what we should do about it. And I had the best night's sleep last night that I've had for a long while. BrainWise was get it out of your head, get it written down.
I love it. Very good. Great BrainWise moment from the week. And so for our listeners who are listening to our dialogue today, as you walk away and reflect, the questions or the prompts to think about this week is, as we go into Thanksgiving or you go in wherever you might be, if there's something else you're going into this week, what characters do you have and who do you want to show up as and why? I think are two really interesting questions to begin asking yourself as you go along this journey of identifying your multiple or your different characters that can show up in different situations. And then be very intentional about which ones you're going to have show up and when.
And have fun doing it.
Yes, enjoy yourself because it's a good time. You saw us today. I was enjoying. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. We all love to learn about ourselves. So take some time to explore who you are. And with that, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy your time with family and friends. And until next time, always stay curious, stay compassionate, and always stay brainwise.
BrainWise.